Well, if
about a half a minute, sir.
If the studies that you cite from China, which again questionable methodology and questionable science, if they were really correct, then you'd expect everyone from West Texas to be less intelligent than everyone in other parts of the country where there's no fluoridated water.
First of all, as far as the validation of the Chinese studies, Zhang, who did that,
but I think this is our response.
Oh, okay, okay.
Dr. George, your time was up.
Sorry.
So that's why I turned to him. I'm sorry. Excuse me. Go ahead.
Yeah, as far as the validity of the Chinese studies, don't forget we've got 24. They don't all come from China. One came from Iran, India, another from Mexico. But the point is this: Zhang updated that study and submitted it for publication in the Environmental Health Perspectives, which is the leading environmental journal in the United States, is actually published by the National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences, which is part of the U.S. the Department of Health and Human Services. Now, that was accepted for publication. So his methodology, which you're questioning, was actually validated by one of the leading environmental journals in the United States. I should add, it was later withdrawn, not for any methodological weaknesses, but because some of the information had been published before, and it's the policy of that journal not to publish information that's already been published. But the fact remains that it went through peer review, and that methodology met the standards of the leading environmental health journal in the United States.
Could I add something?
Sure.
I just wanted to add that, that 10 years ago, I would probably see maybe one fluoridation case a year where it was very noticeable. And in the past year, I'm seeing probably one a week, and I'm not exaggerating. So I know that this whole 41% thing is probably low. It's probably over 50% of these adolescents, 12 to 15, who are being exposed. And our government, the EPA and the Health and Human Services, lowered that level to 0.7 for a reason, because the science is overwhelming. It's not enough. It needs to be zero. But
zero isn't achievable because it naturally occurs in the water.
That's fine. But no artificial fluoridation is what I'm saying. If it's naturally occurring in some area, that's the way it goes. But in areas where we don't have it naturally occurring, or it's in very, very low amounts, don't supplement. Let us just drink clean water. I don't know why that's
we're at time there, gentlemen.
Okay.
Mayor,
and I know you're doing a great job, Larry, facilitating, but I'm going to ask that the audience please keep it down. It makes it very difficult for me to concentrate, and we've invited these people. I know Dr. Connett has come from a long way away. We know he's come from further away even than West Texas, but please don't disrupt our ability to stay focused. If you feel the need to clap and cheer, please go into the gallery where you can watch it in the council chambers or in the auditorium, because we're really trying to stay focused here.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Well, I wanted to re-ask the question that still is yet to be answered, but I don't want to ask anybody over here. I want to ask Dr. Wong if you can chime in on the question that Councilmember Shade asked, and that is, and this may not be exactly how she asked it, but I think we're both trying to head in the same direction, is if the recommendation is 0.7 milligrams per liter, what were the assumptions used to come up with that recommendation? Because in a memo released from the water utility, it says that the 0.7 milligrams per liter was based on individual community needs. What does that mean?
Well, I think some of the new recommendations that just came out, originally that range was based on some of the climate and temperature, because there was considered to be variations in some of the consumption of water based on the climate and temperature. But then they've come to realize that because of air conditioning and other factors, that variation is not as great, and so that's why they made the single recommendation 0.7. I thought you were actually going to ask about the other question regarding topical versus systemic.
That's fine. If you have more information, we'd love to hear it.
Well, just regarding that, I mean, I did, and I have spoken to the CDC, and the quote, what they actually say is that it's predominantly topical, but I mean, it's actually in the Surgeon General's report, Oral Health in America. I mean, they state it's really because of they still acknowledge the systemic effect, but that because of the length of the time the tooth is at risk of caries during the post-eruptive phase. So because originally it was thought just to have that effect on children, but now they know that the effect also goes into adulthood. And so because of that long extended period of protection from the effects, that predominantly it's topical. But again, I spoke to CDC yesterday, and they still acknowledge some systemic effect also.
Could I respond to that?
Hang on a second.
Okay.
Can you speak, though, to any of the assumptions in the recommendation as to the consumption rates per day? Did they use an assumed average daily consumption rate?
They looked at that, and that is part of the information that they used in coming up with the recommendations of 0.7. So they had some, if you look at their actual data, estimates of what average consumption is and things like that.
And so was there any information in this, I guess, new issue of standards, was there any information or recommendation or conversation regarding the dosage versus the percentage? The doses of fluoride consumed based on their assumptions?
Well, again, I think that the amounts and estimates of what is consumed were taken into account in those estimates, in the recommendations.
Right.
So in other words, the lower dosage, the lower concentration was a recommendation based on what might be a different idea than previously was held in terms of how much was being consumed.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. I got it.
I know fluoride-free Austin wanted to respond to CP, so I'll allow that. Gentlemen, you'll have a chance after they speak.
Dr. Wang is correct when he says the CDC used the word predominant. But if you look at the full quote from the 1999 paper, they said, we used to believe that fluoride worked because before the teeth have erupted, fluoride had been accumulating in the enamel so that when the teeth erupted into the mouth, those teeth would be protected from the acid attack from sugars being rotted down by bacteria. And they said, however, laboratory and epidemiological studies now indicate that not enough fluoride is incorporated before the teeth have erupted to actually offer much protection. And that's when they went on to say that the predominant benefit is topical, not systemic. In other words, they were admitting in 1999 that they got the mechanism of fluoride's action wrong for over 50 years and had misled pediatricians who were giving pregnant women fluoride tablets and babies fluoride drops because of this theory of incorporating it into the growing enamel.
Gentlemen.
I'll reiterate what I said earlier, that yes, the CDC did say what they said, but they also said that the fluoride is incorporated into the tooth structure, which it is. And that fluoride ion in the tooth structure reduces the susceptibility of the tooth structure to the acid attack from the plaque, which results in dental decay. And you will also see that once the lesion goes through the enamel into the underlying dentin, in individuals where they have, in areas where they have the higher fluoridation rates, you'll see a slower decay rate in the dentin than you do in people who are not in the higher fluoridated areas. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the root surface too. So it is incorporated in, and the CDC says that it is.
Dr. George, anything?
I don't have anything to add in the dental area.
Did you want to respond as well?
I think it's important to note that the group in the CDC who makes these comments are about 30 people. They're in the oral health division of the CDC. Most of them are dentists, if I'm not mistaken. So we've already got a little bit of a biased opinion there. It's not the entire CDC saying this, but once a group makes a comment, then it's adopted, and that's what goes out, and we all assume it's the entire CDC.
And in fact, if you go back to that 1999 statement from the CDC, they were 6 years out of date on health studies. They cited a review in 1993, and as you've already seen, their proposal that fluoridation was coming, tooth decay was coming down in the United States because the percentage of the population drinking fluoridated water was going up, was either totally incompetent, meaning they weren't aware of the World Health Organization data, which showed that these declines were going on in nearly every country, whether it was fluoridated or not. But so that was either incompetent or highly misleading.
Anything else, gentlemen, on that? Anything else from you all? Let me check in with the council members. Questions that you wanted to ask at this time. There are a couple of others on our agenda that we could get to, but is anything else okay? I think we've covered the item related to the Centers for Disease Control's assessment of fluoridation. There was an item here added by the council having to do with the results of removal and addition of fluoride in other American communities. I know Dr. Yarbrough mentioned the number of communities who have added fluoride, and it came up, I believe, in the PowerPoint presentation as well. Let me go to TDA first to speak to any difference in results that you observe, as you mentioned earlier, having to do with whether fluoride is added or removed.
I assume you're referring to question 5.
Yes, it's
No.
big number 4, Roman numeral, little Roman numeral 5, the results of, and it sort of bridges also into the
But the question is what do you understand is happening in communities that remove fluoride from the drinking water?
That's
Okay.
right.
I'm not aware of any recent studies in the U.S. that have documented caries prevalence following complete stoppage for more than a year, not recent studies. On the flip side of that, in the U.S., the trend over the last 10 years has been to either maintain the existing fluoridation or to start fluoridating. There is one instance or two instances that I will bring up. They're older studies. One was the Antigua, Wisconsin. They began fluoridation in June of 1949, and they ceased in November of 1960. And after they ceased, after 5.5 years, second graders had over 200% more decay, and fourth graders had 70% more. Sixth graders had 91% more than the same ages in 1960. And so citizens reinstated the water fluoridation there in October 1965 based on the severe deterioration of the oral health of the children. And then the other one was Galesburg, Illinois, which their public water supply came from an aquifer from a deep well water, and the fluoride content of the water was 2.2 parts per million. In 1959, their water source was switched to the Mississippi River, which the concentration was 0.1 part per million, and the data revealed a 10% increase in the number of decay-free 14-year-olds, a 38% increase in decay overall. 2 years later, the community began fluoridating at 1 part per million due to the severe declining oral health of its children.
Again, you have to look at the quality of these studies. I think